Please be seated. The court is now back in session, and I'd like to give the floor again to Judge Lavange to put questions to this witness. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Miasven, we are going to pursue with my examination, and I'd like to ask you questions about the prisoners who were arrested at the rear. You said this morning that the Thai fishermen, or the people who had been arrested at sea, were brought to Kampong Som. And we saw that Kampong Som was under the authority of Mr. Mias Mut, and I'd like to present to you a new document, and this is document E3/928, ERN Khmer 000017-026, French ERN 0061 1668 68, that's it, yes. English ERN I cannot find it for the moment, I'm sorry. Well, this is what is stated in this telegram. In all, as of 27 March 1978 until 30 March 1978, the number of arrested Vietnamese and shot was of 120 men and 5 boats with 5 horsepower and a certain number of weapons, as well as other material that was confiscated. In paragraph 2, the liberation of the Thai was delayed and was not able to be completed by the set date because of the errors in the names of the people who came to take these captured people. But however, after verification, these names were not entirely wrong. There were only small errors at the ends of the first names. Generally speaking, the names were correct. So we see that there are certain plans to release the arrested people, and I'd like to specify that this telegram is dated 1 April 1978. It is signed by Mut, and it is addressed to Uncle Noon Ferban and to the archives. So, Miasven, were you made aware of the existence of diplomatic negotiations or of negotiations, period, regarding the release of these Thai fishermen?
No, I was not aware of what happened in Kampong Som. It was not the affair within my section.
Well, I can add to this that on the case file there are a certain number of articles that mention diplomatic negotiations between Thailand and Cambodia. In particular, document D56-doc.098, and in particular page with the following ERN S00008979, where the visit of a Thai delegation to Phnom Penh is described. A delegation apparently that was received by Mr. Yeng Sari, and this document apparently mentions negotiations regarding the release of fishermen, and we have another document on the same topic. This is document E3/1275, and in particular, page at ERN S000-10313. And finally, there is a last article that is indexed as E108/28.292. This is an article from the Far Eastern Economic Review of 31 January 1978 with the following ERNs. English, S00008277. Khmer, S00795923-25, and French, S00768339. So let me specify that the heading of this article in French is Mise en garde sévère of Bangkok, so Bangkok's severe warning, and Phnom Penh propaganda, tough warning from Bangkok in English, and Phnom Penh propaganda. And a visit by Mr. Yengsari to Thailand is described, as well as a meeting with General Rang Sak Chumaman. And this article dates from July 1978, 31 July 1978 specifically. So now let's turn to the relations that you might have had with the zone, and in particular after the disappearance of Mr. Chu Chet. You told me that after the disappearance of Chu Chet, who was a zone secretary, only Sun remained, who headed the zone. And it happens to be that on the case file, we have many reports addressed by the zone, the West Zone, also called 401, to the Ankar. And now I would like to focus simply on one of these reports, which is document indexed E3/1014. Can you tell me if you remember having received from the zone authorities directions regarding servicemen who did not have good biographies? That is to say, servicemen who might have had ties with soldiers or officials from the previous regime, or if you also received directions regarding servicemen who were of Chinese descent, or if you received directions regarding Vietnamese.
Bad.
No, I did not.
Hello.
So now let's look at this report in detail, which is the monthly report of July 1978 from Zone 401, addressed to the Ankar. On page 8 in French, ERN 00593530, the following is stated, and I think the prosecution already quoted this, regarding the purchase of Vietnamese and of CIA agents and of bad elements. First of all, we eliminated 100 Vietnamese, whether big or small, whether old or young. 2, we executed 60 people who were high-ranking people and CIA agents or infiltrated American imperialists in units and in cooperatives. 3. In the regional army, we conducted purges on Chinese combatants who were in the army. 40 Chinese soldiers in the army were kept, however, to perform production work. 4. Measures were taken against 3 Vietnamese soldiers. 5. 10 people from sections and companies and all cooperatives were purged. Among these elements, some were lazy, whereas others were dissidents and insulted the population. And some others were denounced by the enemies and they did not accept to work. Our measures against the enemy operations mentioned above continued to proceed and to look for enemies from all sides who were boring from within. And we have to continue purging the bases, the units, the offices, and the different ministries for these units to be clean. So I would like to remind you, Mr. Miasvun, that this report is dated July 1978. So this report was produced when a priori the only person in charge of the zone was Suong, the head of Division 1. So did you speak to Suong about such directions, about such policies?
As far as I knew regarding that plan, there was a plan to smash the June enemy and the infiltrated enemy within the units. However, I did not know whether those enemies were smashed.
Well, here the regional army is mentioned. According to you, the regional army outside of Division 1, what was it made up of? What did it consist of?
I did not control the sector armies, as the sector's armies were so separate from the zone armies. I took charge of those forces outside the sector.
Do you remember directions regarding other policies? Whether policies involving Khmer trying to escape to Thailand, for example? You said this morning that they were supposed to be sent to the rear. Whom would you turn them into if ever you caught these people? Did you know where these people went?
If they fled to my place, then they would be arrested and sent to the rear to the sector, and the sector would take measures against them. That's all I knew, but I did not know if the similar process was practiced elsewhere.
Were there any specific directions regarding cases of moral misbehavior? Do you know what moral misbehavior meant?
The word moral misconduct in the eyes of the leadership is about the moral offense between a man and a woman. And people were prohibited from committing such moral misconduct. But the important point was for those men not to play around with women or to violate any military disciplines regarding women. And it's important for them to adhere to such guidelines.
Did you ever hear of directions regarding marriages that were arranged by the party?
As for the marriage, there was a meeting in the zone regarding the instructions for the marriage. Male must at least be 20 years old, and women must be at least 18 years old, as I recall. Marriage should be conducted by making a commitment, and in my section, as I observed, the men and the women need to see each other first, and if they like each other, then they would inform me. So it's based on their consent when they were married, and there was no forced marriage. That's the practice within the military structure, and I actually did that as well for my soldiers. If they loved one another, then they would inform me and I would consent to their marriage. But let me tell you, during that time there was no musical performance during the marriage. They would just hold one another's hands and make a commitment.
Thank you, witness. I'm just going to read out an excerpt from the report we spoke about. This is document E3/1094 on page 7 in French at ERN 00593529. This is a free translation. Suicide by hanging. In District 27 in Tangkwak Cooperative, a man called On was living in a mobile regional unit. After his arranged marriage by Ankar, he was demobilized to come back to the cooperative. 2 weeks later, and he had arrived since July 1978, he hung himself. We tried to analyze the reasons, but there was nothing in his past that might have explained this act. Were you aware of people who committed suicide by hanging themselves?
No, I was not, because I never went to Takeo.
Alors, maintenant nous allons...
So now we're going to be speaking about another aspect of this interview regarding your activities in the North Zone. And previously, or before, I would like you to tell me if you are aware of the history of the different sectors that made up this North Zone. If I'm not mistaken, the North Zone was made up of 2 sectors. Sector 106, which is the Prévihir area, and Sector 103, which is the Siem Reap area, as well as Udarmanche. First of all, do you know if some of these sectors had been under the control of someone by the name of Khoi Tuan?
No, I did not know that.
But did you ever hear about Koi Tun alias Kun, alias Dog?
ancien
The former Secretary of the North Zone, the former Minister of Commerce.
I heard of the name, but not at the North Zone. I heard that Koi Tun was at the East Zone. Because there was no one by the name of Koi Tun at the North Zone.
Did you ever hear if Koi Tun had been arrested?
Yes, I heard about that.
Do you know if Koi Tun made any confessions?
No, I did not.
Well, for the purposes of the record, I will mention that Koi Tun was arrested, that he was brought to S21, that he made quite a few confessions at index D108/31.24. And apparently, in his confessions, he incriminated a certain number of people who were living in Sector 106. So, did you ever hear about purges in Sector 106?
No, I did not know about that. I heard only of Sector 103 that comprised of Siem Reap. And I also knew that the private here fell within Sector 103.
Mr. President, if I may be heard for a second. It appears that Judge Laverne is going into the content of confessions. Now, I can recall when there was a witness here, which I wanted to point out a segment in her confession, how she arrived at S21, and I was lectured. Now, it would appear that a judge from the bench is commenting about contents in a confession. There is a double standard. I don't know what the rulings are. I certainly would like clarification. Thank you.
If I could just support that application for the record. Thank you very much. Very quickly, good afternoon, everyone. If I could just support that application for the record. Thank you.
Well, we will continue. We take note of these remarks, but this is not information that is not in the only in a confession, but it's a list of names of people for whom it's known that they were working in Sector 106 and who were led to S21. And I'm only asking the witness if he knows these people. And this is someone by the name of Pafal alias Sot, who was the secretary of Sector 106. Did you ever hear of Mr. Pafal alias Sot, secretary of Sector 106, arrested on 21 February 1977, and whose confessions are on the case file at index D366/7.1.91? If you don't know, just tell me. I'm not going to make you speak about something you don't know.
No, I did not know that.
Did you ever hear about Nem Nyun, alias Huon, who was the secretary of Sot Nikun district, and also of Praksam, alias Ben, secretary of Purok district, or Topsak Kun, alias Sam, member of the Commerce Committee of Sector 106, or of Yongpao, head of security in Sector 106, or Novchan, alias In, secretary of the 350th Division of Sector 106. Do these names in the revised prisoner list of S21 mean anything to you?
No, I did not know them.
Well, you told us earlier that you had not met Chan Sam, alias Komchak, alias Se. While not having met him, did you meet people who spoke to you about Mr. Se while he was working in the North Zone? And do you know if, for example, he had any ties with Tamok or with Kepok?
I only heard of the names, but I did not know the contact amongst any of them.
Well, Kepok was the secretary of which sector then?
I heard that after we fled from the Vietnamese through the women's unit, I learned that the Kai Pok was in charge in Kampong Thom.
Well, I'd like to specify that on the case file we have a telegram listed as E3/239 dated 30 April 1977 and signed by Comrade Uk, and that states the following. He says that he already provided recommendations to Bong Se, and in particular to go to Ampel district following an incident that occurred in this district, because this district depended on the Odarmanche area, and grenades had apparently been thrown at the sector office. Are you aware of this incident?
Response: No, I'm not.
Est-ce qu'on vous a dit si monsieur...
Were you told whether Mr. Kepok had carried out purges in the North Zone sectors?
Response: As I told you, when the Vietnamese came, I learned about Kai Pok, who fled all the way to Kampong Thom through Phra Vihir. So I had no more information about what he did there.
Est-ce que les dirigeants du Kampuchea démocratique que vous avez pu rencontrer ou avec les...
Were the leaders of democratic Kampuchea you were able to meet or to contact talk to you of K-pok and the purges that may have been carried out in the North Zone?
Response: No.
Alors, je précise que nous avons...
Now, let me point out that we have on record a very significant number of telegrams sent by Comrade Se to Angkar or directly to 870 committee, and all of these telegrams were addressed to a number of addressees, most of whom were, in most cases, they were uncle, that is Pol Pot, Non Chie, Brother Van, and at times Brother Von, and sometimes Brother Kier, as well as to the office and archives. And in practically all of these telegrams, they are talking about cleansing and sometimes purges. So you are not aware of anything at all when you went to the North Zone. No one ever talked about K-pok and the purges that were allegedly carried out there. Is that your testimony?
Response: When I went to Pravihir, I did not stop at Kampong Thom, and I did not see anyone in Pravihir except one leader at the location. And when it comes to the representative of the zone, I do not know to which zone Pravihir belong. I met only Takam. And with regard to the affairs of the zone, it was none of my knowledge.
Takom vous a dit qu'il était le...
Takum told you he was whose subordinate? Who did Takum report to?
Response: Takam was the person I knew who was close, and above him was Ta Hong. But Ta Hong already died before I came to the location. I don't remember whether he was shot dead or he died of other cause. And Ta Hong was responsible for a sector, and also there was another person by the name of Pain. Pain was later on removed and allowed to stay home, and I paid him a visit at his home. When the Vietnamese attacked Phnom Penh, he still alive. So I do not know much about what happened at the north because it was the autonomous zone or sector, and I was only in charge of my carrying out my duties for 103 only.
Alors, pour les besoins du travail...
For the record, I would like to state that the telegram sent by Mr. Kamchan to the 870 committee were the following. The telegrams on record are We'll have the reference E3/1091, dated 23rd of August 1977. E3/1144, dated the 5th of September 1977. E3/898, dated the 11th of December 1977. E3/1918, dated 10th of January 1978. E3/996, telegram of the 13th of March 1978, I beg your pardon. E3/1077, dated 10th of April 1978, and the last telegram is E3/1209. Mr. Witness, you stated that the sectors of the North Zone were autonomous sectors. What do you mean by that, precisely?
Response. Autonomous zone here refers to the sector refers to the sector that entered by Nunchi and Khieu Samphan. But when I came there, they were not seen coming to the location because I had been there for a short period of time. I was there for about 4 months only.
Vous avez dit,
If I understood what you said clearly, you stated before this chamber that you received a telegram from Khieu Samphan. Do you recall when you received that telegram? Was it while you were still in the West Zone, or when you were already in Priya Vihir sector?
Response. I may not wish to respond to this question again because I already stated previously about this.
est-ce que, monsieur, vous pouvez nous dire ce que
Mr. Witness, can you tell us whether you met with Khieu Samphan, whether you discussed the situation in the North Zone with him, and what he told you precisely?
Response. I did not say anything to him. I only talked to him about his family members and the details of which had already been discussed before the chamber.
Monsieur le témoin, je pense qu'il y a
Mr. Witness, I believe there may be an interpretation problem. I didn't ask what you told Khieu Samphan. What I am asking of you is to tell us what Khieu Samphan may have told you either directly or via telegrams. What did he talk to you about? What did he draw your attention to? Did he give you any clear instructions? And if yes, which instructions? What instructions?
Cut.
Response. He did not talk anything directly or in person to me. He wrote in a telegram asking me to look after his parents and his brother, and that's all he wrote to me.
Et quand il vous disait de sa famille,
And when he talked to you about his family, did he give you any specific information with regard to the identity of the persons you had to protect?
Response. He referred to his brother without mentioning name, and he said that his parents were old and he would like me to give good care to them and to see where they lived, how they had been doing. That's a very short message in that text.
est-ce que vous pouvez nous décrire
Can you please describe to us the situation you found when you arrived in Previhir sector? Did you find people who were happy, feeling fulfilled, and who ate to their fill, who feared nothing? Or you met people who were grappling with all sorts of problems? And if yes, what problems?
Response. When I entered Rowieng district in the first place, I noted that people who were under Takham's control had been living in fear of being arrested, because they could be arrested even at nights. And when I went to Chad district, I could also note that people were fearful. They told me that they could not sleep very well at night because they had been fearful. And they noted that a jeep would be seen coming to the location. And again, some nights people came from Chad district to report on these incidents, and I told them not to be afraid or fearful again, and I told them that if anyone wanted to arrest them, then they could report this on to me and I could help. And later on, some people keep coming to report to me about their fear because they were afraid that they would be arrested. And eventually, they learned that Angkar was in the location to assist them. They treated us as Angkar, and they said that with our presence, they would no longer be intimidated as they were before. And I also sent some telegrams to Khieu Samphan on the situation near the border. I do not know whether he received the telegram or not, and I indeed assured the people not to be very worried again. And when it comes to the shortages of mosquito nets or blankets, I went to the warehouse to see that the blankets or mosquito nets were stacked in the warehouse only to be destroyed by the termites. They were not really offered to the people, and I could feel that people's livelihood was in great difficulty, and they left the salt was left in the open to be destroyed. They were not offer to the people. And when I reached Chom San, the location near Malupri, near the mountain, I also went to the cooperative and also saw what the situation of the people living condition was like. And then I went to Don Tun, or Damna Traj. I was told that people had been arrested and sent there, and I went there to tell people not to be afraid of being arrested again. And I told them that as long as I was there, no one could be further arrested. And I went all the way to Khieu Samphan's parents' home. And when people had to be moved to the cooperatives, Khieu Samphan's parents had to be left alone in the house. And I reported on this to Khieu Samphan, but I did not know whether he received the message or not because I did not get any response from him on this.
Monsieur Miasven.
Mr. Miasven, were you surprised at the situation you have just described to us? Were you expecting that situation, or you found yourself in an unexpected situation?
Response. I felt that if I were not there, people could be in great danger than this.
Je vais être plus précis, monsieur.
I will try to be more specific, sir. When you went to Priya-Vihir sector, had you been forewarned that you would find a situation different from what you found? In other words, were you told that you might encounter excesses?
Response. I was not forewarned whether there would be any obstacles or problem at Previhir. I was just told to go to Previhir to see the situation that people were arrested and also to see how people lived their life. And I was told that when I would be there, I asked them to only do farming, and then I had to help them build their houses. So these are the two main important things that I was told before I went to Previhir.
Vous nous avez parlé.
Mr. Miasven, you told us of a meeting held in Phnom Penh while you were with Sung, the commander of Division 1. At that point in time, were you given any instructions to be liberal in your approach, to apply the party lines in a moderate manner?
Response. At Privy here, I think I already stated about this in the previous response to the previous questions. Before that, Pol Pot talked to me about the situation of the enemy who attacked us at the East Zone. It was in August 1978. I don't remember the date exactly when this instruction was informed to me. He talked about the enemy situation near the border. He talked about the tug of wars between our troops, the fightings that took place in the area of Snuol, Svay Rieng province, and in the vicinity of Kampong Cham province. And secondly, he also talked to me that I had to go to Previhir sector to see the situation concerning the arrests of people, because he heard that a lot of people had been arrested and the situation had to be under control because it could have been implicated other senior leaders. And he asked me to be there to help people build canals like we did in 1970s. And also I was told or instructed to build the houses for people to live, because it was a kind of plateau area where canals could not be properly dug.
Vous avez également indiqué.
You also stated on several occasions that there was a security center at Ruven. I do not know whether I am pronouncing it correctly. You stated that there were several hundreds of persons detained at that place. Can you tell us what was the situation prevalent at the center when you went there?
Response. At the Rovieng Security Center, there were guards who were on duty. They were guarding the people who were detained. There were more Cambodian detainees than the Vietnamese. The Vietnamese had been there long ago during the Israq regime, and they had there were about 3 families of Vietnamese. And apart from them, there were about 100 women. I can't say exactly how many detainees there were, because I didn't pay attention to count them. But among the detainees, of course, detainees were kept in the sheds or shacks where they were made to live, and they could raise pigs. There were no fences. And when I was there, I could not say anything as yet. I needed to inspect the situation, and I could see that a lot of women in the women unit were mentally challenged, and they were kept there. And I had an opportunity to talk to a woman who was detained at the Rovieng school. I asked her a few questions why she had to be confined in that detention facility, but some people told me when they asked this question that they were detained because they asked to go home, and others would say that they stole some eggs. And on top of that, a woman who was in love with or had an affair with another person also was detained at the hospital, and she perhaps had been influenced by some kind of magic spell, and then she presented to me a kind of wax in a small box. It's a kind of love magic wax, and she also was transferred to Siem Reap, and she could be heard crying, shouting when on board the vehicle. And by the August of 1978, it was 1 month past, and I noted that there was not enough food at the detention facility, and at the same time the intensive attack by the Vietnamese from the borders could be heard. Then we allowed some people to go to Thala Boriwat. Before they were released, they were allowed to kill some pigs for food. Then the Vietnamese came, and that's the end of the story.
Vous nous parlez de la liberté.
You have talked to us of the liberation of people detained at Ro Vien Security Center. For the sake of clarity, can you tell us why those persons were released? Were they released because the Vietnamese were approaching? Was it because of the war? Or it was because you had received instructions to do so? Or was it because you personally deemed it necessary?
I decided on my own that if they were to be kept there, nobody would take care of them. So I made that decision on my own, together with one person from the district who came together with me. And also due to the intense situation at the front, I decided to set them free. So all of them were set free.
Donc, pour que ça soit absolument...
In order for us to be very clear on this matter, are you saying that you never received any instructions whatsoever from the authorities, the hierarchy in Phnom Penh, to release the detainees in Preah Vihear sector?
That is correct.
And later on, did you have the opportunity to meet, for example, Mr. Khieu Samphan?
No, I did not.
Well, I would like to mention a certain number of statements by Khieu Samphan, who publicly spoke, and I'm referring in particular to a document indexed E3/198, and this is the report from an interview, and the French ERN is 00296212. The English ERN is 001846 80, and Khmer 0007 8213. So this is an interview that took place in Pailin on 17 August 2005. And the person drafting the report wrote the following. He said, according to him, under the Khmer Rouge regime, each zone, in particular the zone secretary, was considered like a vice king, managing the affairs in the zone according to his desires. The Central Committee was not able to control what was happening because it only received reports. In the new North Zone, after Kanchap was designated as head, there were arrests and there were against the instructions of the hierarchy. In 1978, and Bong number 1 sent men to receive tourists, and then they learned about this, and then they reported on what had happened. So, did you ever hear about such a mission that consisted in preparing tourists in the Privy Here or Siem Reap areas?
No, I did not go and receive them.
And aside from Pol Pot or Khieu Samphan, did you receive any instructions from your superior, who apparently was the new person in charge of the North Zone?
I did not receive any instruction from him. He went to my workplace once, also to see the living condition of the people there. He went only to 2 districts, as the districts were far from one another. It was about 100 kilometers away between 2 districts, and the mode of travel was difficult through those roads. So he discussed about the works at those districts and the living condition of the people, the food, and that's how I saw it and described it to you.
Can you remind us, Mr. V.S. Boone, can you remind us when precisely you arrived in the Privy Here zone?
I went to Privy Here in August 1978, but I cannot recall the date.
And in August 1978, when you arrived, were you given an office that allowed you to send out telegrams? Did you have staff to send telegrams and to receive telegrams?
Yes, there were 2 staff. They were the remaining staff from Ta Hong's place, so I used them, but I did not bring any staff with me. And when I was there, I saw the 2 staff, one by the name of Oi and another one by the name of Ol.
So, concretely speaking, when you arrived, you had staff and you had equipment to send out and receive messages from Phnom Penh. Is that so?
Yes. Initially, we received the telegram from Phnom Penh, and the first one was the message from Khieu Samphan. And I did not report to anyone at that stage except to Khieu Samphan regarding the situation of his relatives. And due to the unfavorable situation, I did not make many reporting. So I did not make much reports.
In August 1978, were the Vietnamese already close to the area of Previer or close to Phnom Penh? And is this why you could not send messages or send more messages than the few messages that you sent?
Yes, that is correct.
When did you see the first Vietnamese soldier in Previer?
Vietnamese soldiers first entered Phnom Penh, and then Previer, they did not yet reach Previer, and I cannot recall the date when they reached Previer. It was likely that they entered in November or December, but I cannot recall the date.
Mr. Mears Vun, do you know exactly when the Vietnamese soldiers arrived in Phnom Penh? What was the date?
I did not know exactly when Vietnamese attacked Phnom Penh, but I listened to the radio broadcasted from America that on the 6th of January, Vietnamese attacked Phnom Penh. At that time, Ta Soon stayed overnight with me, and I told him that Vietnamese entered Phnom Penh, and he replied that, "Don't say that, they could not reach Phnom Penh." But I said that I listened to VOA and I heard about that, but he did not believe me. And then he said, okay, then he would go to Siem Reap. So he left. By that time, I was by myself in Ra Vieng district. And the next morning, I saw soldiers coming from the border crossing Previer sector as they crossed from Stang Train. And I asked them where they had been, and they told me that they came from the border and that the Vietnamese troops reached Kampong Cham and Snool area. And I asked them, was it true? And they said yes. So then I could determine that Vietnamese troops arrived in Previer either on the 7th or the 8th of January, and by that time I had removed myself.
Mr. Meersvun, between August 1978 and January 1979, it wasn't possible to communicate with Phnom Penh? Is that what we must understand?
No, communication could not be established with Phnom Penh. The telegraph machine could not link with one another. Thank you, Judge Lavenge. Thank you, witness. The time is appropriate for a break. We will take 20 minutes break and return at 3 p.m. Court officer, could you assist the witness and the duty counsel during the break and have them return to the courtroom at 3 p.m. The court is now adjourned.